How's everyone doing tonight? My name is Doug McLean, and I'm really pleased to be one of the hosts here tonight for PechaKucha Night 23.
And I'm Jenny. We're excited to be your hosts for tonight's PKN, and it's in partnership tonight with the Alberta Professional Planners Institute. Woo!
Now, some of you were there, some of you may have heard about it, but PechaKucha Night 22 was an interesting evening. So we didn't want to completely ignore what went on that night, so you may have noticed when you walked into the theater, we have a wonderful new water feature out there to really pay homage to what happened that evening back in June.
We also have another feature we've added to PKN 23 to ensure a dry show, which is the roof. So you're welcome for that. But in all seriousness, though, thank you for coming out to that beautiful venue if you did come and brave the rain. It was a tough decision that we had to cancel the event, so yeah, we just want to say thanks.
But that's in the past. We're here tonight. We're excited to be here tonight at the McLeod Theatre. And for this evening, NextGen is proud to partner with Alberta's Professional Planners Institute. We also want to make sure we welcome tonight the 2015 APPI conference delegates here to Edmonton. Yeah, we can do that, that's for sure. So tonight's PechaKucha will feature presentations, musings, and creative ideas from those in the planning community and those who are interested and excited about city building. But before we get going, we want to ask a couple quick questions. How many of you have been to more than 5 PechaKuchas?
I can't really see.
Yeah, we can't really see. We're just taking your word that you're putting your hands up, but
yeah.
How about more than 10?
Make some noise, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, that would help us.
Yeah.
More than 20?
That's not even me.
Okay, yeah. So we're assuming nobody, because I can't really see. And how many of you are here for your first ever PechaKucha night? Wow.
Wow.
Okay, fantastic. So we got a lot of newbies here tonight. That's good.
Mm-hmm. So for you PK veterans, you'll already know what this is all about, but for you newbies, I'll explain a little bit about how this event got started. It started actually in Tokyo as a way for architects to share ideas. And since then, they use the word PechaKucha as a Japanese phrase for the sound of chit-chat.
Now, unlike a typical lecture-style presentation, PechaKuchas are a little bit different. Each presenter gets 20 slides and 20 seconds per slide for a total of 6 minutes and 40 seconds. So it's really fast-paced. It forces them to be succinct and clear with their ideas, but it also gives them the flexibility to make sure that their passion and their excitement for the topic still shines through.
And it's not just about architecture anymore either. Tonight's PKN is built around an urban planning theme. And you'll see from the presenters, though, it covers a wide range of ideas and passions. And Edmonton is a proud member of the global community of over 700 cities that host PKNs. And the 21 that we've hosted, we've had 217 presenters and 12,000 audience members. And Shaw TV tonight actually will be filming all the presentations.
And the group that brings PechaKucha to you is Edmonton's NextGen. And it's a group of volunteers that support the growth of a city that is really built for the next generation. It engages its network of 18 to 40-year-olds and gives them a platform on which to share their voice, share their ideas, and share their perspectives. It's made up of a range of committee members, those from the community as well as those from the City of Edmonton representing various departments. And that really brings together a broad range of people who are working together to encourage that aspect of community leadership. NextGen is recruiting over the course of September and October. So if you are interested at all in looking at joining NextGen, being on the committee, whether you're a community member or whether you're a staff member with the City of Edmonton, you can visit the NextGen booth just outside the theater, ask anybody there for a little bit more information about NextGen. I'm a former NextGen committee member myself, and so for any of you who are thinking about it, it's a really fantastic way to learn a lot more about what's going on in the city, all the things that are happening behind the scenes as the city continues to grow and build. And so I certainly gained a lot just from that aspect of it. So I certainly encourage you to consider it if you're looking at getting involved a little bit more with what goes on with NextGen. Oh, thanks.
Isn't he the best? So we're pleased to have Stantec as our presenting sponsor, and PechaKucha couldn't happen without their ongoing support. And we could go on saying thank you, but we're actually going to welcome to the stage Yolanda Liu, Senior Associate with Stantec.
Good evening, everyone. What a great location our organizers have chosen for tonight's event. My name is Yolanda Liu, and this evening I have the privilege of representing both Stantec and the Alberta Professional Planners Institute Conference Steering Committee. This year's APPI conference is being hosted by both the City of Edmonton and Stantec. Tonight's PKN is teaming up with APPI to bring you an urban planning theme. It takes thoughtful professional planning to build a great city, and this is what we are going to hear about this evening from a variety of different perspectives. The Conference Steering Committee has been hard at work over the past year planning the APPI 2015 conference. We are so happy that we were able to make this collaboration happen tonight. It is through all these wonderful collaborations that we can share our ideas and build better communities and cities. Stantec has been a proud sponsor of Edmonton's Next Gen and the exciting PKN events for over a year now. And the connection for us was an obvious match. Our 14,000 plus staff make up some of the brightest minds in our industries. And at Stantec, our culture is very much about fostering chit-chat amongst these bright minds. At Stantec, we strive to create environments that not only promote staff to connect, chat, and share ideas, but we also want to capture these ideas to grow and learn from them. Stantec supports our local community, the organizations, and the people in many ways. And organizations like NextGen and events like tonight are excellent examples of this. We are thankful we can be a part of this unique event put on by many talented individuals. I'm looking forward to hearing the presenters tonight, and want to thank the City of Edmonton's Next Gen program and PKN committee, as well as APPI. Hope you all enjoy the evening. On behalf of Stantec and the APPI Conference Steering Committee, once again, thank you.
Thank you, Yolanda, and of course, thank you to Stantec. We certainly couldn't bring this evening to everyone without their support. Of course, we're really excited about now the 66-story tower, I think is what I heard this week. It just keeps getting bigger, so we're excited to see that rising above Edmonton's skyline here soon. Yeah, we can applaud that day.
All right.
This is good. We're in a real applausy mood tonight. This is good.
It's nice. So we already know. It's all for Doug, I think. That's what's going on here.
No, I don't think so.
So we already know that Edmontonians just love to share. And in that spirit, we want you to join the PKN conversation by sharing your moments, your favorite moments, your shameless selfies by using the hashtag YEGPKN. And if you're like me, these next presentations will make you laugh or cry. And most importantly, they're going to inspire you. So.
Okay, well, you've heard enough from us, so now let's switch it to the stars of the evening, our presenters. And to kick things off tonight, we invite Chris Gusen to the stage with his presentation about Edmonton, DIY City.
I'm so sorry.
Hello, I'm Chris. I work for an initiative called Make Something Edmonton. And this is a photo of me, some of my coworkers, and quite a few random strangers disco dancing in a parking spot in downtown Edmonton. We took the idea from Parking Day, which happens at cities around the world tomorrow. We fed the meter with some coins, which gave us permission to use the space. We didn't actually have permission, but the pop-up disco gave permission to a whole bunch of people to do something out of the ordinary, to dance in the street. And this was a way of promoting DIY City, a collaboration between Make Something Edmonton, City of Edmonton City Lab, and citizens all over the city. Just like the pop-up disco, DIY City was an invitation on a bigger scale, an invitation to launch temporary placemaking projects all over the city, all on one day, June 21st. So most of you are probably familiar with the term tactical urbanism. But I'm not here to talk about tactical urbanism tonight. I'm here to talk to you about an affliction. I'm here to talk to you about an insidious disease that affects a certain group of society. urbanists. Now, an urbanist, to my mind, is anyone who cares about making their city, whether they're a professional or an amateur. And since the theme of this evening is urban planning, I'm guessing that that includes almost everyone in the audience tonight, which means that all of you are at risk and have probably experienced before something called urbanist's aching heart. UAH for short, pronounced wah. Urbanist's aching heart. I met someone the other day who was definitely suffering from urbanist's aching heart. He loves Edmonton, but when he goes back to Calgary and his friends there give him a hard time, he finds himself defending future Edmonton, Edmonton in 5 years. So you might experience urbanist's aching heart if you know where the city's heading, but you don't think it's getting there fast enough. Or you might experience wah if, like me, you're a cyclist and you hear about bike lanes getting removed. Or you might experience wah if you know that the city has a compelling vision for where it's going to go, but you hear about some sort of misstep or delay along the way. And if you're experiencing that feeling, you might hear about a temporary project like this one and think, what's the big deal? Well, I am here to tell you that there is a remedy for wah. And it involves projects like this. And it has 4 parts. Listen, act, share, and repeat. So listening was a big component of the Heart Garden project that Miranda, Jimmy, and Reyes organized for DIY City. And what you find when you listen is that you learn about real gaps and real opportunities in the city where you might be able to insert a temporary project. You also find people who share your concerns, who might be great collaborators. Listening is the first part of the cure for wah. The second part is action. Edmonton is a theater town, and tactical urbanism can learn a lot from theater. So on a shoestring budget, with just some lights and some fabric, the secret burlesque society turned a gazebo into a magical place. And a gazebo is a natural stage, but there are stages all over the city. Alleyways, parking lots. This is Wesley Andreas, who I think is in the audience tonight. His Animate the Alley project turned an otherwise drab space into a bright gathering place. The character that he's stenciling there is called a meeple. It's from a board game called Carcassonne. Any Carcassonne players out there? I love the word meeple because it contains both me for the individual and people for the group. All of us define ourselves in relation to the group. So the third step is share. Share your project. Urbanist's aching heart thrives when you quarantine it. You need to share that feeling with other people. Share the projects you've tried, share your successes, and share your failures. That's how you defeat it. Sharing is also how you get great projects done. This is a collaborative mural where dozens of artists came together on June 21st and took over the side of an abandoned building. This is what it looks like. So sharing can be a way of getting projects done. The fourth and final step is repeat. Listen, act, share, and then do it all over again. But I don't want to pretend this is easy. This particular project was supposed to be part of a larger intervention in that space, but the landowner backed out at the last minute after countless hours of work on behalf of the project organizers. So of course they experienced urbanist's aching heart. Or when I was scrolling through the DIY City hashtag in preparation for this evening, I saw a tweet from Nadir, who's one of the speakers who you'll see later this evening. He was talking about an experience he had when he tried to bring redesigned barriers to the festivals in the city. So replacing those old construction zone style ones with beautiful barriers created by local artists. He was greeted with a resounding no. This won't work, it's too risky. And that breeds wah. So I am constantly meeting people, ordinary Edmontonians, who want to put their passion and their energy and their ideas into making this city better. How can we make it easier for them to do so? How can we defeat wah together? How can we turn it from a timid, defeated wah to a roaring wah? The answer is DIY City all every damn day. Whenever you want. It started out as an invitation for June 21st, but actually it's a year-long invitation. And so what I want to close with is we have the talent in this room to launch 100 DIY City projects. You can start tonight, you can start at intermission, find someone to talk to, and share your idea. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Chris. Up next is Sarah Feldman with What Moves You? Let's Talk Transit.
Last night, I had a dream. Last night, I had the wildest dream you wouldn't believe. And it might be because I stayed up late, and I had some cake, and that sort of behavior always sends me to a strange nocturnal wonderland. But this time was different. You see, this dream was a true whirlwind, and I went so many places and saw so many interesting things. And I saw a lot of trains and trams and buses and stations. But what was really different this time was that the places I went were really unique. The people and the cities all really seemed to fit their local context. My dream started on a bus, and I looked out the window, and I realized instantly two things. Number one, we're not in Edmonton, and number two, we're moving really fast. You see, I was in the York region outside of Toronto, and we were moving really fast because we were in our own dedicated lane. And before I knew it, I was deposited at my destination, and I started frantically searching around for ways to get around this big city, and somehow I ended up at City Hall. And then, like a beacon in the night, I saw this glowing information panel. And it had all sorts of information about how to get around, from the TTC to the GO train to even Zipcar. I reached out and touched the panel, and poof, I was magically transported to a bus stop. But this bus stop was really different. There was no high technology, just a paper route map stuck to a pole. I was in Montreal. And what was different here was the passengers, the people. They were all lined up, first come, first served, to get on the bus. And I felt warmly welcomed in this community of strangers. When I got off the bus, a tram zipped by. A tram, you might think. There are no trams in Montreal. But you see, now I was in Melbourne. And I love trams, so I couldn't wait to get on. But when I reached in my pocket, I realized I don't have any money. But then this nice lady came up to me and said, "Don't worry, honey. The tram downtown in Melbourne is free." Free? Of course it's free. In my dream state, it seemed so obvious. So I hopped on that free tram and rode for what felt like hours. And eventually, I got tired and really, really thirsty. So I got off the tram and went into a train station. And the place was literally jam-packed. There were throngs of people, a way you never see in North America. And so I knew I was in Hong Kong. And instantly, I knew how I was going to buy my drink. I went into a convenience store, and I reached in my pocket, and I pulled out my transit pass. I pulled out my octopus card, and I waved my magic card at the till, and I bought my drink. And I went on my merry way. And so then I reached in my pocket again, and this time, to my surprise, I had my smartphone. And I looked at it, and I saw that there was a new app installed. It was called MBTA M-Ticket. And I opened it, and it had a whole transit pass to ride the Boston Transit Network that day. So I decided to head down to the Boston waterfront and catch another bus. So I walked down to the waterfront, and when I got there, the bus that pulled up was a really different type of bus. It was the Vancouver Aquabus. And at this point, I'm thinking, these cities really do have unique transit systems that fit their local context and the people in them. And whilst I'm musing on this, drinking my latte and waiting my nautical adventure, I start to hear the CBC radio news talk about traffic congestion on the Whitemud. And I wake up. I'm at home in my bed in Edmonton. The radio alarm had gone off. And as I started to wake up to this city, I realized we have a really unique opportunity here to shape how we get around. You see, we're a young city, one of the youngest in Canada, and we're a growing city. And I think it's because of these combination of factors that we have such a passion for building a great city. And we also have panache. Did you know that 35 years ago, Edmonton was the first city in North America with a population under 1 million to build a modern light rail system? And I think it's this type of forward thinking that we're going to need to take us forward the next 35 years. But in order to come up with solutions, we need to dream. We need to start thinking of what the future of our transit systems look like. How will transit help us meet our big city goals? How will transit improve the everyday lives of citizens? Not just what does transit look like, but what does it feel like? Cities all around the world are doing all sorts of interesting things with their transit systems. Some of them are really obvious, and some of them you never would have thought of. Some of them are using cutting-edge technology, while others are using old ideas in new and innovative ways. But what's similar about all of these cities where transit's having a real impact is that they're not afraid to try, to experiment, maybe to have a little fun, to see transit as more than a utilitarian exercise of connecting point A to point B. So perhaps one way we can measure the success of our transit systems is that it's reflected in our art, in our music and paintings and photographs, or that we make Mario Brothers network maps, or buttons with the names of all the stations. Or we could measure our success in how well our transit systems reflect our values. But you see, values are not universal. They're unique to our communities. So what matters in your community? Do you value a transit system that's a preferred mode choice for all users? Or a transit system that's more affordable than owning, maintaining, and parking a car? Or a transit system that supports the economic development and competitiveness of our cities? Or that helps us move around in a winter city? Or do you value a transit system that supports people getting around even if they don't have access to other ways of moving? Ultimately, it all comes down to values. How transit can support our lifestyles and how it can support the type of city we want to live in. So why does transit matter to you? Why do you ride? How do you imagine our future in transit? What moves you? Let's talk. Thank you.
Thank you for that great presentation, Sarah. I was just recently in Korea, actually, and I was intrigued getting on the subways there, where when you do get on the trains, they'll play really happy classical music, which I'm assuming is just to keep you smiling as you cram your way into the crazy train. So that was another interesting thing to go along with all the stuff you brought up to our attention tonight. And just to know as well that the references for Sarah's images, if you are curious, they will be at the Next Gen booth, so you can go and take a look at those at the intermission if you want to. For our third presentation of the evening, we're pleased to have with us Nadir Bellahmer. He's here to present about the golden age of design during the Dark Ages.
Thanks very much. I'm one of the wildcard presentations tonight. I'll be presenting on about 800 years from 700s to about the 1500s of underreported design. This came out of the Islamic or Muslim empires. I'm going to give you a teeny tiny snapshot. This, what you're looking at, is carved out of a solid piece of rock crystal from Iraq in the year 975. Just elegant and beautiful. What you're looking at right now, you may know the name of. It's originally from not Indonesia, but Iran and India. It's called Paisley, named after a Scottish town that started to reproduce these like crazy because they were so beautiful. So a lot of these motifs have made their way around and are resounding today. Calligraphy was a very esteemed artwork. Of course, many people transcribed Quran, so it was a way of transmitting the word of God, but it was also a way to decorate buildings and ornamentations. Arabesques, which are florals, foliations, which you'll see on this piece here, have adorned all kinds of design items until today. This is carved out of a solid piece of wood. It's from Egypt, and it was made to hold Qurans. You can see there is scripture around it and elegant arabesques on the base. Just a beautiful piece. This was a silk saddlecloth made for a Turkish general who died in the year 961. It was taken back to Europe by crusaders, or holy warriors back in the day, and made its way to northern France, where it is better known as the Shroud of Saint Joss. So it adorned the bones of a saint. Until the 1100s, for 300 years, it was known as the Emirate of Sicily, and when it was reclaimed by a Norman king, Roger II, he commissioned this mantle for himself by the Muslim artisans that he kept in his court, because they were real good. And so this was used by popes up until the 1800s as a piece. It's called China because it was originated in China, but it spread throughout the Islamic world over the next few hundred years and became very popular in Europe as well. So a lot of the Spanish Muslim Empire would produce pieces for Europe where it informed their tastes moving forward. This is a brass basin. Metalworks were very popular as well during that time with gold and silver inlays. This was produced on commission for the French royal family. It's called Baptistère de Saint-Louis. It was used for generations to baptize French royalty. There's another Egyptian piece on the left. This is a mosque lamp, and on the right is called the Luck of Edenhall, renamed when it was snafu'd by crusaders at the time who took real good care of it. Glass and enameling and gilding with metal oxides was one of the innovations at the time, and these were kind of like unseen things at the time for Europeans especially. The Great Mosque of Cordoba in Spain, built in the 900s, this was a game changer for architecture at the time. The vaults and the rosettes and all the different kinds of arches that you would see moving forward were heavily inspired by this piece because it was on the European continent and was eventually reclaimed. Innovations in arch design happened throughout the ages, and you'll start from the top left to right. There's the horseshoe arch, followed by the pointed arch, and the Oji arch in the middle from Mughal India, intersecting arches on the far right. Those were huge innovations, and you can see a multifoil arch that was in the picture. Marrakesh, 1100s. This is my urban planning slide. This is a Turkish town in the 1400s. Muslim cities at the time were among the most advanced in the world, and for a long time had places like Cordoba in the 900s had covered sewers, trash collection, and lit streets that you wouldn't see in Paris or London for 700 years. Carpets. Everybody loves carpets and rugs, originally from Persia, and you can pick them up at IKEA. That's how ubiquitous they are. Warm on your feet. Sigmund Freud had them in his office. Spread across the Islamic world, different styles from different places, made by the Turks for production in Europe, but eventually the Italians thought, you know what, we can make these too and sell them and incorporate them into our Renaissance art, which they did for many motifs that had come out of the Middle East at the time, such as the halo around Virgin Mary. Her hijab has arabesques on it. And on the rug, on the religious painting on the right, you can see the word Allah written all around. They just copied it, and they were like, hey, that's a nice design. The carpets later became known as Holbein carpets because this Dutch man painted a lot of people who looked like Todd Babiak in the 1500s. So it became known as Holbein rugs, and thugged out shots like this. You always had to have luxuries around you, and so to the right of Todd's head is a metal copper hand warmer. Alhambra Palace. Stunning. You're looking at a ceiling here. This is a type of vaulting called muqarnas, an innovation by the Islamic world. Keep this slide in mind for the next one. These were kind of later known as stalactite vaulting and used throughout Europe. This is a honeycomb to represent infinity. M.C. Escher. On the left is what he used to draw, and on the right, what he drew after he visited Alhambra Palace in the 1930s, called it the single biggest inspiration in his life, thus spawning posters for dorm room walls to help people trip out during their college years. Very famous style. So Renaissance painting took on a lot of innovations, and a lot of them came from the Muslim world, like the oils that they used. But perspective was an Italian innovation using geometric innovations introduced by Alhazen, who was a polymath at the time, and introduced, like guys like Fibonacci totally ripped him off. And Alhazen also is credited with inventing the camera obscura, tessellations in tile that you're looking at right now are very popular throughout the Islamic world, adorning walls, exterior and interior, floors, you name it. And mathematics was a way to express oneself, express infinity. Abstract and figurative, the art was all over the place, from Gothic to Baroque to Rococo to Art Nouveau, to the sofa you sit on and the floral patterns and all kinds of patterns you see on the fabrics and tiles around you. These are all legacies of the Islamic empire that was at the height of its civilization at the time. Thank you.
All right, so pretty much all of them have made me laugh so far, so that's awesome. Thanks, Nadir. I have some stuff to say. One of them is, before we get to our next two presentations in the first half. Thanks to Councillor Andrew Knack for coming out, which seems to, like, he comes out to everything. But thank you also for supporting tonight. And as we mentioned earlier, PechaKucha is one of but many activities that Next Gen puts together. And if you want an updated list of activities or volunteer opportunities, all of us volunteer, you can follow us on Twitter at EDMNextGen or visit us at edmontonnextgen.ca. And an upcoming event that we're actually hosting is called Happy City, Your City, Your Life with Charles Montgomery, and that will be on October 1st at MacEwan University. Charles is an urban experimentalist who explores how we can be happier in cities and look for answers in the intersection of urban design and the new science of happiness. I had to read that because I didn't want to mess it up. Tickets are $15 or $10 for students. And yeah, okay, now we're back to the presentations, and up next is Omar Reyes with An Inconvenient Immigrant, a love story.
True story. I once had a girlfriend who broke up with me without letting me know. I found out from the kid at the bike racks who told me she had a boyfriend. I really liked this girl so much that I wrote our initials with a huge letter and a huge heart around on the top of my baseball cap. To this day, I don't remember if it was water or the tears from my eyes that erased her initials from my baseball cap. I was 11 years old, and I learned a very valuable lesson that afternoon, and it's that no matter how vigorous you try to erase ink from fabric, you will always leave behind an ugly stain of heartache and regret. I wish I could say that was the last time I had my heart broken, but let's be honest, right? We've all been fooled by romance, because you see, romance wants to sell us an ideal. Romance wants to delay the truth of reality for as long as possible. And romance can cause us to trust a little too quickly. See, I know this because at one time in my life, I was head over heels in love with Canada. I was 5 years old when my family fled from El Salvador because of the Civil War. And to this day, I still have this traumatic memory of rushing into our house and hiding underneath the bed because we could hear the gunshots getting closer and closer. So you would understand why I loved Canada the way that I did. We landed in Toronto, Ontario on July 10th, 1985, with nothing more than our luggage and a little bit of hope. Despite all the circumstances that we encountered, we loved our new country. Now, as immigrants, we're very well aware of how strange we sound and look to the general population, which is okay because it's a very small price to pay to feel safe. Did you know that according to the National Household Survey that was done in 2011, 20% of Edmonton's population was composed of immigrants? Of course, as immigrants, we want to be known for more than a statistic. We want to leave a legacy. Like, for example, the Chinese Garden at Louis McKinney Park. It's a reflection of Chinese culture as well as commemorating the early Chinese pioneers who settled here. But before we can talk about legacy, we need to talk about making this relationship official and legal. And so like a wedding vow, we go through a ceremony that transforms us into Canadian citizens. And like a wedding vow, we say an oath that affirms our new responsibility. And so what we do is we raise our right hand and we say, I swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Queen of Canada, her heirs and successors, and that I will faithfully observe the laws of Canada and fulfill my duties as a Canadian citizen. It's also of great hope that we know what we're actually saying when we say these words, but that's besides the point. Like many relationships, years after having said this oath, my feelings for Canada have changed. You see, I was led to believe that Canada has always been about justice and cooperation and respect of human dignity. And perhaps when the European settlers first landed on these shores, there was a partnership and there was a sense of gratitude and respect towards the keepers of this land. Like immigrants, they depended on their hosts for their survival. But slowly, things began to change and deteriorate. What used to be a partnership became subjugation. Like, for example, the Dominion Lands Act of 1872 promoted European settlement here in the prairies by giving away indigenous lands to settlers just like that. Our famed first Prime Minister, Sir John A. Macdonald, was so determined to build a railroad from coast to coast that he withheld food from the people of Treaty 6 territory, which is where our city is located on, to the point of starvation in order to keep them away from the railroads being built on their land. And of course, we're very well aware of approximately 150,000 little boys and little girls taken from their families and placed in residential schools in order to kill the Indian in the child. The trauma, the pain, the abuse is incomprehensible. My question is, why did I learn about all these things until after I graduated from high school? And why wasn't this information included in my citizenship welcome package? And why do I feel more welcomed in this country than some of my Aboriginal friends have ever felt? Now, my relationship with Canada has changed a little and my feelings have shifted, but I'm not giving up. I'm not breaking up. It only means that I've got a lot of learning to do. So the change that we want to see in this country, in my opinion, begins by understanding the truth of how we got here. And so there are artists, musicians, elders, writers that can tell us what went wrong, but they can also tell us what we can do to make things right. Richard Wagamisi, he's a Ojibwe journalist and writer who says this: our neighbors in this country need to hear stories about our capacity for forgiveness, for self-examination, for compassion, and for our yearning for peace, because they speak to our resiliency as a people. That is how reconciliation happens. And so I stand here as a Salvadorian and as a Canadian citizen to say that I've grown more in love with Canada, this land, and its people because of the truth that I've seen and heard, but it's not the romantic kind of love. It's love rooted in honesty and responsibility. Gracias, and hi.
Thank you for that great presentation, Omar. And now our final presentation of this first half of PechaKucha Night 23, we have local artist Jason Blower with his presentation, Pride Within a Canvas.
I'm illustrator and painter Jason Blower. For the first part of my career now, I've been trying to answer a question. How do you instill civic pride within a canvas? Now, you might have seen my artwork either animated at the Mayor's Celebration of the Arts last year, which was pretty awesome. I enjoyed that. You might have seen it at Folk Fest, Fringe, K-Days, or any of the many other festivals that I attend. I should practice a little bit more here. But what you might not know is everything really started at the beginning with my father. Throughout my life, my dad has given me all sorts of little mini history lessons about the city, what the name of this bridge came from, where this building name came from. And you might not also know that he was an author. He put together a book shortly before I was born about the gold rush, and have these really vivid memories of this old-timer panning using a sleuth box in my father's den. And it's just a taste of many, many, many images my father has shared with me. And I think it's all those lessons, those little bits that he gave me about the city that kind of really gave me this kind of sense of understanding, knowing different parts of our history and where we've come from. And I have this firm belief that the more that we know about a city, the more that we'll learn to love it. The more we learn to love it, the more we'll participate in it. And the more we participate in it, I think the more we'll make it better. And I've kind of done this in my own way. And we all have our own different ways of doing it. We all do it into various levels of degrees. But I've done it with my artwork. And I've really made sure that I made it accessible. I do everything from limited edition prints to even things you can give away, little postcards and magnets. I've kind of taken very complex images like the high-level bridge. I've simplified it into its essential elements, the things that kind of really make it what it is. And I kind of paint it with these colors that kind of marry it all together, even though it's really simplified. And I've been really lucky, the fact that this city has really become a really big part of me. And that it's been infused into my art and the life that I am now, or the career that I've kind of taken on here. The other lucky thing is it's been found in all sorts of places. It's been in like the storefront here. It's also been in magazines. It's been in murals. It's been in all little places, and things have ended up in people's homes, and they've taken it home because they've really attached themselves to it too. But the thing that really gets me the most is the conversations. I can give art out, people will love it, but when I can sit down and I can talk to somebody about the history of a place or their memories and things that have really isolated them or solidified themselves here, that's what really makes a big difference. And that I'm reaching people, and and that little kids are learning about our pieces of our city and our history, and are hopefully at one point in time are going to take the things that they love and spread it out, and even and be part of things like Next Gen or other facilities that are going to make the place better. And it's funny how things come full circle. All those little lessons that my dad gave me, I'm doing it now. I'm visiting schools. I'm telling stories about landmarks and where they've come from. I've done little drawing lessons. But the next thing that I'm taking myself to, and the next project I'm working on, is a more comprehensive book. It's an Edmonton activity book, where kids get to learn through regular lessons on the little bits of Edmonton's past and history, and it's called Hello Yag. It's interactive. We have a passport that kids are getting to go out and go around the city and get stamps. We're doing things about science, language arts, math, and various other curriculums, which have married together my education degree along with my history of Edmonton knowledge from my father and things that I'm learning now, along with my illustration degree. And it's kind of my hope that one day this Hello Yag book will end up in schools and homes where everybody will be able to kind of relish in our history and our love of our city. and that these people will kind of grow up with this greater appreciation that they may see things that they don't like, they might see things that they love, but they will take those things and they will approach it and try and make it better. So this is me when I was a kid. If you couldn't tell that by now. But it's amazing that that I can do this and that the city has been so embraced me and have taken all the things that I've seen and I've put onto canvas and that they themselves. So I guess maybe to answer the question, how do you instill pride inside a canvas? You start with a young one. You make it fun. You make it interesting. And you give it as much enthusiasm as you possibly can in it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. If you want to practice like I did, you just drink 2 glasses of wine before you go on stage. It's true. So that wraps up the first half of the night. So welcome back. At this point, we do want to say thank you to the Citadel Theatre. They're working with us again. We've been here at the McLeod before, and it's a great venue, as you can all tell. And we want to say thank you to Will Bellier. You heard his beats, aka the Huguenot, and our photographer, DJ David Roush.
You can double as the DJ.
Oh dear. Okay. Your turn.
So we've had 5 great presentations so far. We're going to kick off the second half here. We're going to invite back to the stage Yolanda Liu of Stantec, and she will introduce our next presenter.
Thank you. Hello again. Our next presenter here has been a great mentor, colleague, and friend. I am honored tonight to introduce John Steil. John is a planner from Stantec's Vancouver office and is also currently chair of the Canadian Institute of Planners College of Fellows. If you have an opportunity, check out some of John's many talents or ask him about his love of birds and their connection to his artwork. He is a painter, printmaker, and poet. He's also active as a big brother and enjoys biking, hiking, and his Saturday morning hockey games. Tonight, John will be encouraging you to look at the city in a different way, through the lens of what we write on the walls. Please welcome John Steil.
So I'm old school. I'm taking my cue from the hosts. They all had notes. So this is a summary of one of my recent chapbooks called Words on Walls, and it celebrates where people didn't adhere to the rule of posting no bills. The obscured words here say, there's a lot in here. So liberal democracy protects the rights of individuals like freedom of speech, the right to hold ideas and to communicate those freely. And this sentence on the wall, that's my bike, is more than just a scribble on a wall. I think it makes a strong statement. It reminds us of our rights and how precious and valuable they can be. Here, for example, at Maple Tree Square in Gastown, people are free to say what they like. But this is really a visual demonstration of the word juxtaposition. And here someone else has a really different opinion. Lavender is just so hot now. So these cedar words on the Vancouver Art Gallery, 1990 by New York conceptual artist Neimer, and it's based on the notion of conceptual art that art may exist in absence of an object. It can be described, but it doesn't need to be produced. At the Contemporary Art Gallery on Nelson, this temporary mural, it includes headlines from newspapers with excerpts of last lines for popular movies. Forget it, Jake, it's Chinatown, might be spray painted next to Enbridge pipeline rejected. This public art installation by Gwen Boyle includes this glacial erratic, and it's connected by this little stream to a bronze duplicate of the stone. And there's a quote there from Leonardo Leonardo da Vinci about the water you touch is the last of what has passed and the first of that which comes. This public art installation by forgot to flip the page. The Quequot in New Westminster were hit by smallpox in 1916, and the government seized their reserve, and many were assimilated into the community, and this quote is about their indigenous heritage. This art project, and there's several of these in my neighborhood, is called the Whispers Project, and it's based on this historical aesthetic of hand-painted signs. And this continues around the corner to say, this might feel like home. And there's numerous of these in my neighborhood, like this one, on the side of the Bellahmer Hotel, where the alley side is all about consumerism, people needing to buy what they see. The front reads, "Unlimited growth increases the divide." It's about rich, poor, east, west. Really, it's about the polarization of Vancouver. And 25 years later, we get this public art installation just down the street and around the corner from the previous one. And it says, "Let's heal the divide," that the other piece talked about. And I think that's great that two pieces of art 25 years apart can speak to each other. So the city of Vancouver has an anti-graffiti program to connect artists with owners whose buildings have been tagged, because art doesn't get as victimized as blank walls. And when you read this quote by Margaret Mead, famous anthropologist, think about Greenpeace that started in Vancouver. This is from the Emerald Lounge in Chinatown. It's a quote from Frank Sinatra, the singer, actor, gangster pal. It's a bit out of character for Chinatown, but Chinatown is evolving, turning into this funky, mixed area. This haiku by Ed Spence is on the Alibi Room. That's my neighborhood pub. And he's got a series, he does these surreptitiously around town. Another example of another haiku of his was, "Last night, the power went out in our building. It was like camping." So some of the most interesting art, a lot of it guerrilla art, some sanctioned and so on, I find are in the older industrial areas like Mount Pleasant, where people sort of seem to have more free rein to do what they like. And I was really impressed with this relatively new proverb. This anguished saga is from the alleyway between Chinatown and the downtown east side. It's continued on nearby walls, and one of them says, "This is to every hoe that was with my husband, fiancé. I'm not locked up no more, so watch your back." Guerrilla Surplus on Broadway really amuses me, just the amount of advertising they can cram on the front. You know, stop by, let our friendly and knowledgeable staff help you find exactly what you're looking for. Like, hurry over and get your camouflage underwear. Like, figure out where you'd need that. So Main and Hastings was the early center of downtown Vancouver. It's where this neoclassical Bank of Montreal was built in 1930, later used for a community bank called Four Corners Saving. And you can see the names overlaid on each other on the frieze here. And it's a real good chance to use the word palimpsest, what I don't get to use very often. But at the Tandem Bike Cafe on West 16th, you can find out about apartment for rent, piano lessons, liquefied natural gas plants clash with climate action, beekeepers seek yard in kits. Join our workshop on the reality behind cell phone radiation. Embrace your story. On a Saturday night at 9:15 at the West Hotel in the downtown east side, the police arrived and found a man stabbed dead. Another one died in hospital. And this spontaneous chalk remembrance just showed up a few days later on the side of the hotel. It was there for about 2 weeks. But this is about the message I want to leave you with, about look at the city, look at the details, pay attention, and I really like this one. Throw out your TV, go outside, try to fall in love. Thank you.
All right, thank you, John. Next up is a girl with a really cool name. Her name is Jenny. Hong. She's here to talk to you about Edmonton's energy transition and whether you're in.
This is the story of Edmonton's tumultuous, tempestuous relationship with energy. Our first love was coal. Edmonton is located on top of several coal deposits, with the largest being the Clover Bar Seam in northeast Edmonton, and responsible for 95% of the coal produced in this area. Between 1880 and 1974, when the last mine was closed, there were over 150 mines in total recorded in the city. There were so many mines at one point or another all along our riverbanks: Gusen Hill, Rundle, Beverly, Ada Boulevard. Over 15 million tons of coal were produced during those nine decades. Oh, how we loved coal. It offered us warmth and provided thousands of workers with jobs. But then we started to hate the coal and the mines as our city started to grow, and we no longer wanted the ugliness and the dangers of these mines dotting our cityscape. By 1945, most of the coal mining was exiled to areas outside of the city. And then we started to flirt with oil. At first, oil was not flirting back. We pursued, we drilled and drilled. In 1946, Imperial Oil spent millions drilling in the province and hit 133 dry holes. Then, on February 13th of the following year, after drilling on a farm for 3 months, this farm located 50 kilometers south of Edmonton, we finally struck it. The Leduc #1 discovery kickstarted our love affair with oil. And it transformed us from a sleepy, nobody farming province into one of the richest of the country. This new relationship with oil was intoxicating. We wanted more and more of it, and everyone else wanted us because we had it. We were an unstoppable power couple. But over the past 6 decades, this relationship has made us a little too complacent. We love our resources, but we don't cherish them. We waste them by building car-oriented cities and homes and buildings that are the most energy-intensive in the country. And Alberta will only be adopting the National Energy Code, which stipulates standards for energy efficiency for the first time this fall. Our electricity grid is the most carbon-intensive in the country. Our coal-fired power plants, they are only 40% efficient at converting coal to electricity, and the remaining 60% of the energy inputted is lost as heat. That is like for every 5 bottles of beer you buy, before you leave the parking lot, you slam 3 of them to the ground, and you take only 2 home. With the looming threat of climate change, poor air quality, and the risks of continuing with an economy too heavily based on non-renewables, now is the time to address this dysfunctional relationship with energy. Edmonton City Council is starting to get serious and proactive about repairing this broken relationship. Just last month, City Council passed a new community energy transition policy that aims to transform Edmonton into a sustainable and energy resilient city. In Edmonton, with world-class energy-efficient buildings and industry. A city that is enabling of active and sustainable transportation, with a greener electricity grid, and more electricity produced close to where it is used. Some stats now, well, targets. By 2035, we want to reduce community GHG emissions by 35%, reduce per capita energy consumption by 25%, and produce 10% of Edmonton's electricity locally. As a local example of how this is possible, U of A campus grew in size by 65% in the past 4 decades, while its power usage has decreased by 21%. Since it started using heat and power cogeneration in 1994, it's saved over $10 million in utility bills. As a further away example, everyone loves Sweden. Their economy doubled since the late 70s, doubled while its GHG emissions has decreased. 2014 was the first year in 40 years during which global GHG emissions flatlined without the help of an economic downturn. But it was due to the recent aggressive investments in renewables and energy efficiency. This is huge news. Experts in the field call this decoupling of economic growth and GHG emissions. We could also call it conscious uncoupling. Edmonton and Alberta, how are we going to consciously uncouple from GHG emissions and improve the competitiveness of our energy economy? In 14, global investors poured 2 times the amount of money into new renewables than new fossil fuel projects. Our past and current legacy with non-renewables must not cloud our judgment and keep us from capitalizing on the greatest economic opportunity of our lifetime. On an individual basis, energy transition is also good for our wallets and health. This his name is Kurt, and he's a PhD student at the U of A who studies location efficiency. He says, a household with 2 cars can save $75,000. $75,000 in 10 years if they just get rid of one of the cars. That extra $75,000 makes getting a home in a walkable area closer to where we live and play seem a lot more affordable. A car-oriented city doesn't just turn us into angry commuting cats. It's bad for air quality. It deters us from physical activity, and, it puts us at a higher risk of getting hit by cars. Lastly, energy transition is so damn sexy. Just look at these sleek solar panels. So sexy and functional and whimsical. How can you not cheat on coal with these? Within the sole context of energy transition, yes, we're advocating for open relationships. Edmonton has great solar generation potential. The same solar panels located in Edmonton for the period of a year would generate 35% more electricity than if it was located in Berlin, Germany. Nate has done research that shows not doing snow removal had minimal impacts on panel performance. So let's see more of these hardy and sexy panels around town. Fear and dread of climate change can be so paralyzing and unproductive, but love is inspiring, it's motivating, it's compelling. It calls us to do better. It calls us to want to make better decisions for our families, our city, our future. Energy transition. It's not about the energy, it's about us.
Thank you, Jenny. I especially like the Toonces the driving cat image in there, for any of you old Saturday Night Live fans from years ago. Well, good. Thanks. I appreciate that. So now we have our next presenter, Dustin Bajer, who is an educator and ecologically inspired designer. He's here to speak on the nature of cities.
This is one of my favorite things. This is an ecosystem, and every single point on this diagram represents a living or a non-living element in this network, and every single line represents a relationship between these elements. And if you take a look in the center, there's a massive amount of connections, and that's actually what makes these kinds of systems so stable and so resilient. But they don't start off that way. They actually start off very fragile, and slowly new elements come and they join that system. They take advantage of the connections that are there, and they create the conditions necessary, or the conditions that are then able to build the connections further. Now, as these connections grow, we end up with something that is stable. We end up with something that is resilient. So we move from something fragile to something very complex, something with lots of diversity. And if we go back to that original image of the ecosystem, there's so many connections in there that you have this tremendous sharing of resources. That's an interesting slide. And you can imagine if you have a forest and you put a drop of water in that forest, it can get used 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 times. That is literally the same thing as having 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 times as much water. And so it's this sharing, this passing of resources that happens through connections that make that system resilient. Now, there was a really cool picture of a city in some succession, but I'm going to try to make the argument that cities are also networks, and they also grow and evolve over time. And in fact, cities are places for maximizing connections. Right now, there's 180,000 people every day moving into urban environments because they are places where you can work, you can live, you can play, you can run into new people and new ideas and new opportunities that you would never run into. And the whole thing grows in complexity, and you can't do that living out in the forest on your own. Now, when you end up with two systems that coming together, we have something extra special. Ecologists call this an ecotone. An ecotone, and Edmonton is actually an ecotone. So to the north of us, we have the boreal forest. To the south of us, we have the Great Plains. And so where we live here, we actually have all of the diversity and connections of the system to the north, all of the diversity and connections to the system of the south, and a whole bunch of elements that really can only exist in this particular place. What gets me really excited is to think about another kind of ecotone. What if we could take ecological systems and marry them with our urban systems? What might that look like? What kinds of connections can we create when this ecotone comes into fruition? Now, we probably think of a lot of benefits, planting a tree, it looks beautiful, could potentially provide food, it can do a lot of things for us, but cities can actually do a lot of things for ecosystems as well. To give you an example, cities heat up during the day, and that provides microclimates for plants and animals. It also, we also tend to have problems with runoff in cities. And well, as mentioned, ecosystems can capture and they can store and they can make use of those resources. So I think that there's a case to be made about partnering these two networks together. A couple years ago, the city, myself, and a couple hundred volunteers went into McKinnon Ravine, and we planted thousands of edible native perennial plants. This is a site that was until this point being mowed and maintained, and so the idea was turn it back into forest. But we're very conscious in trying to choose species that would bring people down into that space and interact with it. So I think that was an example of a project that really could not have happened in an ecosystem on its own or in a city on its own, but really is the coming together of those two. Everywhere you look in this city, there's opportunities for it. We tend to have a lot of waste resources that we're trying to get rid of. This is a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek example of something that we could do. People always go, Dustin, it'd be so gross. But maybe we shouldn't throw our garbage on the ground anyway, so a little bit of a feedback loop there. In Austin, Texas, they accidentally built a bat bridge, which is amazing. Underneath this bridge, millions of bats live there, and every night they fly out into the city, eating their weight in insects, and bringing in at the same time millions of dollars in tourism money. So, so you have here an example where you have ecosystem services partnering to solve an urban solution. What can we do with what can we do here in the city, and how can we embrace our environment? I think that's part of it, because if you can do that, then you can start taking advantage of some of the aspects of Edmonton that we can't find anywhere else. They're specific to here. Edmonton hasn't always been great at this. This is everything in red in this map here is a lost ravine or a lost wetland in the city of Edmonton. So we've drained a lot, we've paved over a lot, but I think moving forward, we have the option, we have the ability to take a look at our natural environment and to extend that into our city, to bring that into our streets, to bring that into our backyards, our balconies, and to partner with these ecological systems. I also think that in the right circumstance, we can also move our built environments into ecological spaces in beneficial ways. We can take things that are currently problems and we can turn them into uniquely Edmonton solutions or Edmonton possibilities. So when you leave here, think about the environment around us and think about partnering with it in different ways, because I think that we have a tremendous amount of opportunity specifically here in Edmonton, and I think it makes a more resilient place, a more interesting place, and I think something that becomes very unique to who we are and where we are. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Dustin. I just had to confirm, but he did draw all of those illustrations, which I thought was really cool. Yeah. So again, I'm going to say that we're thrilled to be back here at the McLeod Theatre with the Citadel. And because of that, they're going to give us 2 tickets to an upcoming show. And we were going to draw with ticket numbers, but that didn't work. So we have seat numbers.
Our accounting firm beforehand picked some seats for us. So the person sitting in right center, which is right here if I'm not mistaken, yes. Row J, seat 7. Okay, figure out what row. I know we don't really know what seats we're in. While you guys are figuring that out, I'll get the tickets. You guys figure that out.
The show that you will be seeing is called Boom. And before the show on that same night, which is September 26th, there will be...
Let's come find you. We'll just do that.
On September 26th, before the show, there will be a 50th anniversary. What is happening up there? I actually can't really see anything, so...
No, H. We're here? Wait. There we go. Stand up. Whoever's seat 7. We have someone seat 7. Hey.
Yay!
There we go. Sorry, pardon me. There you go. Sorry about that.
Doug is giving lap dances.
Yeah, you know.
That route. Okay. I'll try this again.
Okay.
So the Citadel is having a 50th anniversary party, and it's called their Indoor Street Party, again, on September 26th, and Scenic Route to Alaska, the Fast Romantics, and actually a past PK volunteer, DJ Thomas Scott, will be playing. Right? I know. He's everywhere as well. And now we're going to welcome from the UK, Vanessa Thomas, and her presentation is Beware the Smart City, Insights from the UK and Beyond.
Hi, I'm Vanessa. I'm actually from Northeast Edmonton. That's a photo taken just outside of my parents' house. I'm a computer scientist turned social scientist turned some sort of professional generalist, and I'm here to talk with you about the smart city. But it's going to be a pretty serious talk, so I kind of wanted to preface it just by giving you guys some sort of silly photo. So this is a corgi in a costume, and it's really adorable. But I actually want to answer 2 questions for you guys. 1, what is a smart city? And 2, why should you care? Unfortunately, there's not really an easy answer to the first question. There's a ton of different definitions for what a smart city is, and they end up cropping up all over the world in very, very different forms. Sometimes, to complicate matters, the phrase smart city is used interchangeably with the intelligent city, or the digital city, or the wired city. It really depends on where you are and what you're working with. It's proven to be an incredibly powerful concept and marketing slogan, which is why you should care about it. Whether or not you know it, the smart city is all around you. It's a really difficult concept to totally dig into, so I'm hoping to give you an overview of it in the next 5 minutes, but I'm also hoping you'll find out more about it on your own. So you've just seen 2 photos for 2 very different smart city projects. The first was Paris 2050, and this one that just there was Masdar City in the United Arab Emirates. Smart city projects like those are often led by or developed directly in conjunction with big technology companies like Microsoft, Siemens, Cisco Systems, Google, you name it. These worlds that are created by smart city marketing campaigns often have really, really, really seamless, beautiful technology. People walk around worlds and their lives are fabulous. The technologies promise highly controlled and controllable, efficient and effective technological solutions to really complicated urban problems. These 2 images just here are from Microsoft Vision videos for the future. They are stunning and beautiful, not unlike the Paris and Masdar City images from before, but they're incredibly fictional worlds. They're marketing materials, obviously, so there's nothing at all like the slide that I'm too fast for. There's nothing like this guy. There's nobody who's shouting at their screens. There's no coffee-fueled coders at 2 a.m. trying to debug a parsing error. It's just magical, wonderful technology solving all of your problems. There's also absolutely none of The next slide, and I can just slow right down for, yes, electronic waste. There is none of this shown in any of the marketing materials. Most technology companies would prefer it if you just didn't think about what happened to your technology when you replace it. Unfortunately, a lot of technology replaced in smart city campaigns and in Western countries in general end up in places like this. This is the Agbogblashi e-waste dumping ground in Ghana. But you might be wondering, why would I show you these things if I'm discussing marketing materials? Obviously, they're not going to show those things in marketing materials. They want you to think about the wonderful, magical things. So let's look at 2 or 3 or 4, let's look at a few smart city developments that are actually in real life. This is New Songdo in South Korea. I was there earlier in June. It has had about $40 billion invested in it. It initially promised to deliver the ultimate work and lifestyle balance, but unfortunately right now it sits largely empty. It was basically an abandoned city when I was walking around it, and a lot of the infrastructure was rusting. Manchester, Glasgow, and London, along with a lot of other EU cities, have also adopted the phrase smart city. There we've seen a rush to install smart meters, smart traffic systems, and CCTVs, all with the intent of solving various social problems. Unfortunately, with CCTVs, crime hasn't actually been reduced significantly. Energy consumption has barely shifted, if at all, and traffic flows still continue during rush hour. Some peers and I conducted a research project in Manchester, Glasgow, and London earlier this year where we went out and talked with people about what they would actually want from a smart city, and they even were asking for things that most smart city projects didn't consider. So they wanted environmentally friendly communities that were friendly for their families. They wanted activities that could be done. They wanted technology that respected their privacy and security, which was not always the case in smart city campaigns. And they also wanted things that allowed for spontaneous encounters. Unfortunately, really, that's not what's considered in most smart city campaigns. When people seek out success stories about urban development, they often talk about things like the wonderful cable cars in Medellin in Colombia, or the escalators. They talk about the bike lanes in Copenhagen. They talk about the night markets in Beijing. They talk about things that are designed to serve local wants and needs. And unfortunately, a lot of technology companies are for profit. They don't consider local wants and needs. They consider their bottom line. So it's because of all that that I wanted to come here and sort of offer a warning to everybody about the smart city. Yes, I want to acknowledge that digital technologies are amazing, and they have allowed us to do some really fabulous things. We have new ways to share corgi photos and new ways to tweet about what we've eaten for breakfast, and this is all fabulous. But they seriously also carry negative implications for global inequality, environmental degradation, and cultural colonialism. In part because digital technologies are created in a really narrow context, often for an imagined context. And Edmonton isn't an imagined context. It's a real place with a unique history, a unique geography, and just unique stories to it. It has serious issues of inequality on its streets, in its institutions, and in its stories about itself. Generic technology solutions weren't designed with -35 and snowstorms in mind. They weren't designed with Treaty 6 in mind, and they weren't designed with Edmonton in mind. So I believe if we all work together to think about what we actually want from our city and what we actually want from our technologies, we'll be able to design unique Edmonton-based solutions, or at least share silly corgi photos with each other. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. My uncle will be thrilled that his corgis were in the slides. That's good. And our final presentation of the night comes from a friend of NextGen's. Jeff Chase is now in Calgary, but he's the former co-chair of NextGen. We're really happy to have him back. And he's here with his presentation on place and planning from the heart.
Thanks, Doug. I love how they put the nervous guy who's trying to get over his fear of public speaking last, which is fantastic. But I want to start with a preface about planning. When I talk about urban planners tonight, I'm talking about everyone in the room, regardless of your designation, your age, your occupation. I hope that you, in some small way, see yourself as a planner with a role to play in building your city. Tonight I'm going to talk about a few of my favorite things, planning and place. I'm going to use 3 different stories from 3 cities that I've lived in to draw some connections between planning and place and to demonstrate how they've informed the way I see my cities. Mini donuts are a 3rd favorite thing, but I won't be talking about that. Before I begin, I want to clear the air about place, because place isn't just anything, and it shouldn't be thrown around as a buzzword. It isn't what we put on the glossy plans in our reports. It isn't people admiring public art and children playing in the distance in splash pools as trams pass by. That isn't place. So what is it? It's space filled with relationships, with histories, with time, with connections between strangers and friends. We know place because of these things. How they make us feel, how they ground us, how they orient us in our cities, how we connect. It's a bit like a full piggy bank, really. Place is the sum of many different parts. I'm the first one to do that. What makes place is the way that we feel and we operate in it, the way that our histories, our societies, our pasts, our presents all play out like a symphony that's always changing, disappearing, and re-emerging. This is what makes place so amazing. It's the power of place. On December 8th, 2008, when I was sleeping warmly in my Vancouver apartment, just a half a block away, a homeless woman tried to sleep. Cold and exposed, she lit a candle, crawled into a shopping cart, covered it with a blanket, and went to bed. Tracy died that night. By the time that I awoke and read the news, all that was left was some police tape and smoke stains on the side of a concrete wall. This moment profoundly changed the way that I understood not only the intersection of Homer and Davie Streets in Vancouver, but the way that I understood my city. 7 years later, just a couple of weeks ago, I walked by that intersection, and still I think about Tracy and the injustices of that corner. That place for me will never, ever be the same. It was never marked, it was never honored, it's never been remembered. But the physical marks have faded, and my feelings and connections to this stranger in this place remain. They've endured with permanence. The second story I want to tell was from Cambodia. I was lucky enough to spend a year living in Phnom Penh, Cambodia, talking to people about place. A turn of events took me to Phnom Penh's Olympic Stadium, pictured here. It never actually held the Olympic Games, but here it is when it was built in 1956. One of the people that I met was a fellow named Mr. Chum, a research participant, quickly turned friend. He would talk about his memories of the construction of the stadium, but also about his evacuation from the city in 1975 when the Khmer Rouge seized the capital and evacuated 2 million residents into the fields. He would tell me about his memories passing the stadium, of the voices he could hear of people screaming who were executed. He would tell me about the people that he lost. And so getting to know him over my year in Cambodia was one of the greatest moments of my life. We would walk the stadium every week, and he would recount the strata of his life. I learned so much about one person's understanding of the city through his history, through his memory, through his relationships enacted on the concrete upon which we would walk. I learned to see different things, the wounds of a genocide that killed 1 in 4 Cambodians, the subtleness of reconciliation and hope. I learned that one person's story tells a great deal about the changing and the complex nature of place. It speaks to the hidden realities behind every person's story, behind every footstep we take through our city, behind every building that we construct and every building that we knock down. Awkward. And last winter, my last story I want to tell was from last winter. Through a variety of random events, which all make much more sense now, I met a stranger named Robin, and the two of us decided to hold a pop-up snowball fight here in Edmonton. One thing led to another, and thanks to social media, within a month we had 1,000 people signed up for a pop-up snowball fight. On December 14th, 2014, it happened. We filled Kinsman Park not just with bodies, but with people subtly craving this passion for love in their city. Young and old, rich and poor, took part in transforming a vacant field into place. And for just over an hour, things changed. Silence was broken. We created new place. And then it was over. As quickly as it begun, it ended. But that hour changed the faith that I had in Edmonton, in my city. That hour wrapped me in a hope and in an optimism for our future. It speaks to what is possible when we begin to see place as something much bigger and much deeper than the glossy images we sell ourselves. And so snowballs, a woman I never met, and a random stadium in a foreign country have shaped what place means for me. They inspire me to dig deeper, to push harder, and to challenge more assumptions, to see more opportunities in our cities. These three stories have a couple things in common. Each story is centered on connections, on history, on place. And each story impacts the way I see place, not as something static, but as an ecosystem. And each story comes from my heart. When rather than detach ourselves from the emotions and the depth of our cities and our experiences, if we reflect on them, we open up all sorts of new possibilities and perspectives for how we can make place work better. And so I leave you with a question. What stories from your heart, from your cities, from your places, can you talk about, can you reflect on, come from your heart? Thank you.
It's so nice to have you back, Jeff. That was an awesome way to wrap up our night. Before we let you head off into this lovely Edmonton evening, we do have some thank yous that we want to say. And first of all, to the volunteers that make this event possible. It's all run by volunteers. Woo! Beautiful, beautiful people sitting over in this general direction. And this includes our steering committee that work very hard to bring you all the details, wrangle the presenters. And also I want to say thank you, especially to my wonderful co-host, Doug. Thank you. He gets an applause.
We want to make sure also that we thank the City of Edmonton, Graphos, and Klein Dytham Architecture. They're the ones that really brought this idea to life. And then, of course, to Famoso Neapolitan Pizzeria, who have given us pizza vouchers. I think everyone got some of those, so thank you to them for sure. We want to again thank Stantec, our presenting sponsor, for their support, and it's really appreciated. And again, as we've said, we certainly couldn't put this event on without them, so we certainly appreciate Stantec and everything that they do for us with NextGen.
And again, to just say that we are always looking for new opportunities. If you want to develop that with us in NextGen, we're always interested. And if you want to volunteer, again, let us know. Apparently, the website isn't accepting applications right now, but it will be in October, so keep that in mind. And also to John Markey, Josh Wickard, and Patrick Fraser with the Citadel. Thank you. And our DJ, the Huguenot, and photographer, David Rausch. And of course, we can't end with another big thank you for tonight's presenters, so let's give them another round of applause.
And definitely want to thank my co-host, Jenny, for doing a fantastic job here this evening. And with that, Jenny and I will gracefully depart. Thank you again very much for being here for another wonderful PechaKucha night. And we hope that the debates and the discussions here tonight will inspire you to continue that dialogue. And maybe even as well, if there's a topic in mind, you might want to think about it, put it together, and bring that up on this stage and let the PechaKucha masses hear you out. But with that, we'll end things up for this evening. Our next PechaKucha number 24 will take place late February, early March. So we look forward to seeing you then. And until that point, thank you again and have a great night.
Thank you.